So I figured I would come up with my own ranking system for CSGO teams, since the only way we generally rank them at the minute is through the HLTV.org ranking system, and I'm not sure how that works or any of the rules for it, so I figured I would come up with my own and see how it worked. So this is the rules for it. I'm going to go through these now, and then I'll make a separate video where I've applied these rules to the last couple of tournaments. So I started at the major, I've included the major. DreamHack Vegas was included. Then I included, you'll see on the Premier tournaments here, I included the major, DreamHack Vegas, IEM Katowice, and I included Star Ladder, which is on this weekend. So video after this, going to include those four. You'll see what my rankings were and how it worked. So here's the rules. Each month you're going to select one tournament, one Premier event tournament, Premier level tournament, sorry, that'll be selected as your ranking tournament for that month. Which tournament gets this status will be based purely on prize money, and then the fact that they follow the same rules as the major. So this is the next rule. All ranking tournaments must follow the same rules as the major. Obviously for my tournament I select, this isn't true because, you know, not every tournament currently does, and it's not like I can phone up IEM and be like, I've got this ranking system, you should use these rules for it. This is just sort of like, in an ideal world, this is how everyone would run their tournaments, because then obviously all the pro players will run on the same rules and it makes sense. There's no point in having different rules for different tournaments. I don't think that's a good system. I don't know why tournaments currently do that. I think everyone should run the same rules and then you'll get like a fair comparison. But anyway, it's for a different time. So all ranking tournaments must use proper seeding to decide the groups and the matches. This is the biggest reason I wanted to come up with a system, because I don't like tournaments where, say like for example at the major, where you've got 8 legendary teams from 6 months ago that are currently in the tournament. They will be given status as if they're still one of the best 8 teams, and therefore they'll get an easier group or an easier way through or whatever. I don't like that. I'd prefer that there was a proper ranking system like what I'm hoping this could be. So basically the top 8, the top 16 teams that you have invited to the tournament would all be seeded 1 to 16, and then you'd have say if you did a full round robin, you'd do 1 plays 16, 2 plays 15, so on so on. So for example, the Swiss system could use this by seeding their first round of games. You could have 1 plays 16, 2 plays 15, and so on. There's loads of ways to include this. Like the GSL system, your groups would be seeded, the top 4 teams would be put in their own groups, and then the bottom 4 would be spread across those groups, and so on. You'd fill groups obviously according to seeding, so that the best ranked team gets the easiest path through, which I think is fair. I think that's how it should work. So this is the main reason I came up with this. Now at the start of every ranking tournament, all the teams are seeded according to their current rank, so their current ranking points. They're then deducted 20%. This number is open to change. I'm not too sure if 20% is the right number this should be, but it seems to be working fine for now. So they deducted 20% of their current ranking points. These points are deducted whether or not they're qualified for the event, so you can't store your points just by not turning up to the event. Every single month you're going to lose 20% to this decay, whether or not you turn up or not. So this will keep the ranking system from being just who's been going the longest. So it wouldn't mean that NIP was still ranked 1 just because they went 87-0 years and years and years ago. It would try and keep only the best current teams ranked highly. So you'll see in the system this has worked pretty well so far. All ranking tournaments would have 2,000 ranking points to be given out to the participating teams. These will be distributed in the same way the prize money currently is. So how it's distributed, I'm not sure if this is the best way, but again it seems to be working fine for now. I picked 2,000 just because it's an arbitrary number, and it means that if you deduct 20% and you're giving out 2,000, it means that the total number of ranking points in play at any one time can never exceed 10,000, which I think's again a round number, because 20% of 10,000 is 2,000, and since you could lose 2,000 and then gain 2,000, that'd be the equilibrium point. So these two rules combined mean that since you're going to have no more than 5,000 points in play at any time, and since most tournaments give the winner about 40% of the total prize money. They'd get around 40% of the total ranking points, and therefore you could see the best teams, like the most dominant teams throughout history of their era, by how close they get to their maximum amount of points. The maximum amount of points any team could have at any one point is close to 4,000, depending on exactly how many points you give to different teams. So basically you could look back through history and you could see who got the closest to 4,000, and whoever did would generally be the most dominant team of their era. I think that would be a really good and interesting property of this ranking system. So if a team fails to qualify for 3 events in a row, then they forfeit all their current points. This is just so that teams can't, again, like just sit on a couple of points, and you know, it makes calculations easier. It means that you're not going to have, like, say if Astralis now just didn't qualify for an event for the next 3 years, they're not in 3 years still going to have some ranking points left over thanks to the fact they're only losing 20%, because obviously 20% gets smaller and smaller the less points you have, and eventually you're just going to like be down to having to 10 points, then 8 points, and so on and so on. So I think failing to qualify for 3 events means that you've dropped off as a top tier team, and you probably don't deserve to be ranked by this system. You're probably not going to be a top 20 team, which is mainly what this is aimed at ranking. I did make this for like the top 10, but you could probably apply it to the top 20. It seems to be working fine so far. So I think this is pretty fair. If you haven't qualified for 3 events, you lose your points. I don't see why you should keep them. If a team makes a roster move, then the players retain 1/5 of their team points. These points then moved with them to their new team, but only if the new team already has a rank. So I made this rule particularly because of the G2 Envious and the Fnatic Godsent situation. So I think when these players swapped between teams, I think it was fair that they retained at least some of their rank, but not all. So like for the Fnatic players that moved down to Godsent, I think it's fair that they boosted up Godsent. I think it's fair that the players weren't just reset because they had a new team. I think this works out pretty well. You'll see again in the ranking system. It doesn't affect it too much, especially because this was done at the start of it. You'll see in the next video. But basically, the idea is like when Nico joined FaZe, he brings some of his points, and then the player that leaves FaZe takes away some of FaZe's points, and you sort of get like the roster move changes the points, but it doesn't change it to the point where like it's massively throwing it off, because obviously if you're only changing one player, you'd expect the team to generally stay around the same rank anyway. It's only really going to affect teams where, say, if they lose all 5 players and then 5 new players come in. This is sort of just a balance how roster moves work. Again, there's probably tweaking could be done with this rule, but it seems to be working fine so far, so for now we're going to leave it there. Ranking points are always rounded down, so the reason I did this was just so you wouldn't get someone stuck on 1 point forever if they got to 1 point and only turned up for the odd event and finished last. It's not a big deal, but that's the rule. Ranking tournaments will always have 16 teams. The top 8 ranked teams would be invited, while the other 8 would qualify. So currently, like this hasn't been applied because IEM Katowice, this tournament right here that I used, only had 12 teams, as you can see. But I wanted to try it out anyway and see if it worked, and it does actually work. So this rule might not be that important. I just think that in an ideal world, every tournament would have 16, and you would invite 8 according to this system, like the top 8, so that, for example, you wouldn't need VP having to go through some online qualifier where they might not get in. And I think it's fair that you leave the other 8 spots open to qualify, because then you're going to get every now and then an underdog get in there, which is what tournament organisers seem to like, and makes it so that you're seeing different teams rather than just seeing the same 16 over and over. I think that's a pretty good rule. I think tournaments would benefit from this overall. Yeah, other than scheduling maybe. That's why Katowice only had 12. Again though, I think if you want to be a premier ranking tournament, like you would be if this rule's in place, I think you should be inviting 16 and not 12. But again, for now, I'm just going to run, like if I continue this system, I'm not going to worry too much about this rule, because obviously tournaments aren't going to be like catering to my rules. So if there is another big tournament that runs 12, I will probably include it in the ranking. So that's all the rules for now that I've used, but potential rules I've got for the future that I might include is that majors would be given 4,000 points and all teams would be deducted 40% at the start. So what this is going to mean is basically a major counts as 2 events. It's twice as important. Reason I did this was purely because I think pros value the major higher than any other event, and why shouldn't it? I mean, the majors are the biggest events in CS:GO, so figured this might be a good rule to add. Maybe it'll show that the major counted for more, because if players are going to put more effort into winning the major, then why shouldn't it count for more in a ranking system sort of thing? I know generally like the team that wins the major is classed as the best team at the time, so I think this would help the system reflect that. Another idea I had was that maybe there could be a payout for the top ranking teams in the world at the end of each year. This would show like, or maybe not the highest ranking teams of the year, maybe the most consistently high ranking teams of the year. You could like maybe incorporate some point system where at the end of each month the top 10 teams get given points, and then these points go into like some sort of payout or something. I don't know, just an idea I had. Some tournament could like piggyback off the back of this and basically not have to run their own tournaments, but could still give away a prize money at the end of the year. And I thought that was quite interesting. So that's the end of this video. This is just the rules for now. There's going to be another one coming straight after this where I show it retroactively applied to the past 4 tournaments, and you'll see this in action, how it worked, and you'll see the rankings that it came up with. So hopefully you enjoyed this. I think this is a really good system, and I might make videos in future. I might make a series of this where for every tournament I'll re-rank the teams and see what's happening with it, see if there's any changes need to be made to the rules. But yeah, I thought it was good. I thought people might be interested, and thanks for watching.